Welcome back to another video, guys. Today we're going to be talking about why we believe in Victor Wembanyama. As always, like, comment, and subscribe for more NBA content. Victor Wembanyama in his first Summer League game did not play well. We saw him put up some honestly atrocious numbers. He did have 9 points, but it was off 2 of 13 shooting, and he was 1 for 6 beyond the arc. So there wasn't really much to smile about from a scoring perspective. Defensively, he was sound. He was in position. He used his length to get in the way. He did have 5 blocks, and he also did have 8 defensive rebounds. So he was there in other aspects of the game, but he just couldn't get his shot looking right. And there were a lot of people that were willing to throw the bust label or the he's not ready label on him. And for people to say that he's a better prospect possibly than Zion, and then ahead of that LeBron, is an insane label to slap on somebody, especially coming from an entirely different league. When they did it to LeBron really wasn't supposed to be the player that he is today, and many people regard him as the GOAT. So to slap that label on another kid that's coming from the Euro League is a tall ask. Now the thing is, looking at his measurables, he's extremely tall, he's extremely long, he's extremely athletic for his size, and he moves very well and limber. We've seen him take a couple awkward landings, and he seems to be completely unaffected. So hopefully he doesn't have Steph Curry ankles. If he could have anybody else's body parts, we'll be okay. Now, will he be a LeBron tier-esque player in the GOAT conversation? He has the bag and skill set, if he fills out his frame just a little bit more, to do that. Obviously, going to the Spurs allows him to grow as a player, and Pops re-signed with them for another 5 years, which I don't think any of us really saw coming. Now, the most key part about that is the Spurs got the #1 pick, and they picked arguably one of the greatest prospects of all time in Victor. One could ask, if they don't do that, does Greg Popovich still come back? Now, we're watching the clock. He's an older coach in his 70s, obviously, and we're just wondering, like, it seems inevitable that he's going to retire almost as much as LeBron, but even more so because the Spurs haven't been good over the past couple seasons. Now, the most interesting part about it is the fact that nobody saw this coming, but when they slapped the 5 years on the table, he took it. So that might be an indicator of what he sees as potential in Victor, and that makes it even more reasonable for us to go ahead and bet our money on him as a player. Now, in the second game against the Trailblazers, he did have 27 off 9 of 14 shooting. He was 2 of 4 beyond the arc, and he did have 12 rebounds along with 3 blocks. So he did things similar to how he did in game 1, but this time his shot was falling. So we could look at game 1 as more of an adjustment game. He was getting a feel for what it's like to not just play against NBA players, but more so playing with other NBA players or people that potentially will be on NBA rosters. He did end up playing the G League Ignite at one point when he was with his EuroLeague team, but playing with EuroLeague players against American players is completely different from playing with entirely American players. Looking at it from that standpoint, he did have to adjust. Obviously, his shot was really the only negative spot in that first game. Going into the second game, he made the corrections. He made his shots falling. His free throws weren't hitting too great. He did end up shooting 7 of 12. But considering that he went 4 for 4 in game 1 despite shooting so poorly, I'm not very concerned in that aspect of his game. When asked about what exactly the difference was between going from the EuroLeague to the NBA, he explained that the court's more open and that it's going fast, but it's less physical. Now, he also explained that he gets fouled a pretty significant amount, and a lot of them don't get called, but he doesn't get fouled as much or as hard as he did in the EuroLeague. Now, him understanding this as a young player coming into the NBA from overseas is very important because that tells us that he recognizes the biggest difference, which is going to be the floor spacing. And yes, the G League does have more shooting of threes, so the floor is going to be more open right now. But come time when he plays with true NBA talent and all NBA talent and with and against them, obviously the Spurs don't have a great deal of outside shooting, but they're better than your average G League team, or in this case, the Summer League teams. So knowing that he feels like the floor is open right now, come season time, the court's going to be even more open, which gives him more room to operate and play comfortably within his frame and within his game. Knowing that he also feels like the game's less physical provides him a little bit more leniency as far as how he plays his game. He probably won't feel forced to get to his spots. The game will come a little bit more natural to him. The only thing that he's going to have to adjust to is the pace, which could present some problems. And I feel like in that first game, that was a big issue because he's not used to playing just that fast. The bright spot is he recognized it early. He understands the game is still physical, but not as physical. And he also understands that with the lack of physicality, there's also an increase in athleticism on this side, which leads to the pace being just simply faster. And come regular season time, he's going to have to be ready. Do we trust that Greg Popovich is going to make sure he's ready? I, for one, do. But it's just going to be interesting to see how he develops as a player, how he rounds out his game as well as his frame. And coming from a team that has such a system-based roster, we could see him thrive very well and honestly become the system. Obviously, he's following the footsteps of Tim Duncan, who followed in the footsteps of David Robinson. And he did have the dinner where he sat down with the Spurs greats and they explained the game to him a little bit more and got him more on that sort of page. So right now, I'm willing to put all my eggs in the basket with Victor Wembanyama and trust that he's going to be able to be the prospect that we hope he can be. I see him right now as guaranteeable as a perennial all-star and all-NBA caliber player. Do I think he's going to be in the GOAT conversation by the end of his career? I think it's possible, but the likelihood of it, I'm not really sure. Partially because of the type of player he is, the fact that he went to the Spurs, and also he's not a super loud and talkative and boisterous personality. He has more of the Tim Duncan type presence where he will speak in interviews, but he's not really known for being heard in just general conversations. It guarantees that he's not really going to get into much off the court drama that we're expecting. He's not really going to get into any stirring up drama before a game. That's just not going to happen with him, which is why he fits the organization so well. But the most important thing going forward is just going to be to see how things play out for him from a developmental standpoint and how he adjusts to the game. If he brings the game that he's known for playing to the NBA and it works, he's going to be fine. But if we see more of that game against the Hornets, his first summer league game, the bus tag might get slapped on him, unjustly so, but earlier on in his career. But with that being said, good morning, good evening, good night, no matter where you are on the globe watching. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.